Hello and welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Gabriel the Bibi Capaldi and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please do check down below that you are subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free and helps us pop up on your feed a bit more often. I say we imprison them. I say we create the first galactic prison just for them, said Gahar, the president of the Gradarian Council. Gahar paced around the circular table, his small paws making soft padding sounds against the polished obsidian floor. His long, silky fur shifted with every step, revealing swirling patterns of deep black and rich violet under the artificial light from the holographic chamber at the room's center. Standing barely 3 feet tall, Gahar's rotund belly jiggled with each step, a humorous contrast to his otherwise graceful movements. His small, cat-like face remained impassive, though, to a human observer, the slight upward curve of his mouth might have appeared as a perpetual smile. This biological quirk of Gradarian anatomy had proven to be one of many points of misunderstanding between their species. Gahar's spiral-shaped tail bounced energetically with each step, betraying his agitation despite his attempt at maintaining a dignified demeanor. His stubby arms were crossed tightly across his chest, claws partially extended, a clear sign of aggression to any Gradarian present. The council chamber itself was spartanly decorated, just a few colorful pieces of furniture for the sake of aesthetic. The round table dominated the space, its surface embedded with communication panels and data screens for each council member. The true centerpiece was the holographic chamber that rose from the table's center, currently projecting rotating statistics about human Gradarian interactions over the past standard year. The blue glow from the projection cast shadows across the faces of the seated council members, their various colored furs appearing muted in the lighting. With his yellow fur and old age, head enforcer Harag rose from his seat. "President Gahar speaks wisdom," he growled, his voice a perfect example of a lifelong smoker of trellis leaves. "These humans show no respect for our authority as enforcers. Just yesterday, my guards attempted to maintain order in the central marketplace when a group of humans began trading without proper licenses." Harag's claws dug into the table's surface as he continued. "And when my guards approached them with proper intimidation displays, do you know what happened?" He looked around the room, his pupils narrowing to slits. "They used the C-word." He paused, clearly disturbed. "I apologize for my language, but I must be explicit. They called my guards cute, as if we're some sort of domesticated pets for their amusement." The word sent a visible shudder through Gahar's body, his fur standing momentarily on end. It immediately transported him back to his first diplomatic meeting with humans 3 cycles ago. He had been selected as the representative to establish initial relations with the new species seeking Federation membership. From the moment their ambassador entered the room, Gahar had sensed something was fundamentally wrong. The humans' eyes had widened, their mouth forming the strange upward curve they call a smile. But unlike the Gradarian facial configuration, theirs actually indicated pleasure. What followed was the most humiliating diplomatic incident in Gradarian history. Mid-negotiation, the human ambassador had reached out and stroked the fur on top of Gahar's head, cooing in a high-pitched voice. "You are just the cutest little negotiator I've ever seen." Before Gahar could recover from the shock, he found himself lifted into the air and pressed against the human's torso in what they later explained was a hug. The worst part was the voice, that sickening, high-pitched tone humans reserved for infants and small animals, completely stripped of dignity and respect. "Who's a good little diplomat? You are, yes you are." The memory still made his fur bristle with shame. "I must disagree with this approach," came a soft voice from across the table. Trainee Councillor Hadara, her pink fur meticulously groomed, was the youngest member of the council. Imprisoning humans seems extreme and could damage our trade relations with the Federation. Perhaps cultural education. Cultural education? Ambassador Hyor shot to his feet, his white fur practically glowing under the holographic lights. He pointed an accusatory claw directly at Hadara. We all know why you oppose this measure, trainee councillor. You enjoy their attention, don't you? His voice dripped with disgust. I've seen you in the diplomatic quarter, allowing those creatures to touch your fur. You probably even like being called the C-word. The chamber erupted into chaos. Gahar continued his circuit around the table, watching as the council split into factions. Half the members rallied behind Hadara, claiming Hyor's accusations were inappropriate and excessive. The other half vocally supported Hyor, some even adding their own observations of Hadara's supposedly inappropriate friendliness with human diplomats. Silence! Gahar suddenly demanded, raising his spiral-shaped tail high and crossing his arms tightly across his chest, the ultimate Gridarian display of dominance and authority. Among their own kind, this posture would immediately establish order. Of course, when displayed to humans, it typically elicited that dreaded C-word, often accompanied by comments about angry little fluffballs. As the chamber fell silent, Gahar planted his paws firmly on the table's edge. The time for debate is over. We will put this to a vote. I propose converting the unused lower levels of the Federation Central Hub into a containment facility. A prison, specifically for humans who violate our customs and dignity. No more will they treat us as pets. No more will they steal our trading clients with their aggressive business tactics. And no more, his voice lowered dangerously, will the C-word be uttered on our streets without consequences. One by one, the council members cast their votes, each adding commentary as they projected their decision into the holographic chamber. Harag was first, his yellow paw sending a bright, affirmative glow into the display. The humans must learn respect through consequences. Hyor followed quickly with his approval. Their disrespect undermines our standing in the Federation. Hadara hesitated, her pink fur seeming to dim as she finally, reluctantly, cast her vote in favor. If we proceed with this, we should establish clear guidelines and time limits for detention. As the final vote was registered, the holographic chamber flashed with unanimous approval. Gahar couldn't suppress the slight upward twitch of his mouth, a true Gridarian smile, invisible to those unfamiliar with their subtle expressions. The council has spoken, Gahar declared. Now, we must refine our implementation strategy. The discussion grew animated once more as the council debated specifics. After 2 hours of intense deliberation, they reached their conclusion. The word cute would be officially criminalized when directed at any Gridarian citizen. Violators would be immediately arrested and detained in the new containment facility. Force would be authorized to ensure compliance if necessary. The new law takes effect immediately, Gahar announced, feeling a surge of satisfaction. Enforcer Harag, deploy your guards throughout the trading district. Let the humans learn that Gridarians are not to be trifled with. Steve Morrison whistled cheerfully as he navigated the bustling streets of the Federation Central Hub. As a navigator aboard the human trading vessel, Stellar Journey, he always enjoyed his shore leave exploring the vast trading outpost. All around him, the diversity of the galaxy was on vibrant display. Street vendors from a dozen different worlds hawking exotic foods and trinkets, tech enthusiasts haggling over rare components, and even cybernetically enhanced beings striding confidently through the crowds. The Central Hub truly was the crossroads of the Federation, a place where species from across the galaxy came together to trade goods, information, and culture. Steve loved the sensory overload, the mingling sense of alien cuisines, the mixture of different languages, and the visual spectacle of countless life forms going about their business. He turned down a slightly less crowded side street, planning to visit a small shop that sold authentic Ventaxian spices, when three small figures stepped directly into his path. They were fluffy beings with different colored fur, one purple, one blue, and one orange, all standing barely waist-high to Steve. Each of them crossed their stubby arms and raised their spiral-shaped tails straight up behind their heads. Without even thinking, the words slipped from Steve's mouth. "Oh, how cute! What are you little guys doing alone in the street?" The orange one's eyes widened dramatically.
"To the prison!"
it screeched in a surprisingly deep voice. Before Steve could process what was happening, something cold snapped around his wrists. Looking down in confusion, he found himself cuffed with some kind of energy restraints that glowed in a type of blue light. The three fluffy creatures began herding him towards a nearby elevator, their spiral tails bouncing with what seemed like excitement. "Wait, what's going on?" Steve asked, more bewildered than alarmed as he allowed himself to be guided along. He had to shorten his strides considerably to avoid outpacing his small captors.
"Human criminal violated Code 1,"
the purple one declared proudly, having to trot to keep up with even Steve's shortened steps. "Criminal? What did I do?" Steve asked, genuinely confused. The blue one looked up at him with what Steve interpreted as an adorable attempt at a stern expression.
"Used forbidden C-word. Very serious crime."
Steve was led into an elevator that descended deep into the lower levels of the station. When the doors opened, he found himself in a long corridor lined with empty holding cells. Force fields vibrated where bars would traditionally be. With ceremonial gravity, the three guardians guided him to the first cell and deactivated the cuffs before activating the force field. Standing alone in the empty cell, Steve watched his captors march away with an air of immense satisfaction, their tails bouncing in perfect unison. It occurred to him that he could probably find a way to escape. The containment system looked fairly basic, and there wasn't any serious security that he could see. But the thought of fleeing didn't even cross his mind. After all, these little fluffballs seemed to be taking such pride in their new prison, he couldn't bring himself to ruin whatever game they were playing. Instead, he sat down on the surprisingly comfortable bench in his cell and decided to wait it out. Surely someone would come to explain what was really going on eventually. Roberto Vasquez took a long drag from his cigarette as he strolled through the trading district later that same day. As a head of cargo security for the transport vessel Proxima Hall, he was enjoying his brief shore leave while the ship restocked. The central hub was always a good place to unwind, with its vibrant mixture of cultures and a refreshing lack of regulations compared to some of the stricter human colonies. He exhaled a plume of smoke, watching it disperse in the artificial breeze of the station's environmental systems. Without warning, he found himself surrounded by a circle of small, furry creatures he didn't immediately recognize. Their fur came in a rainbow of colors, red, green, blue, yellow, and purple, and they all stood about as tall as his waist, looking up at him with wide, shiny eyes. Roberto's first thought was that they were absolutely adorable, little stuffed toys come to life. Their spiral-shaped tails swished in what seemed to be agitation.
"Fire is forbidden here!"
screeched the red one, pointing a stubby arm at Roberto's cigarette.
"Oh, sorry about that,"
Roberto said quickly, dropping the cigarette and grinding it out with his boot heel.
"Didn't see any no smoking signs. Won't happen again."
The creatures continued to stare at him expectantly, and Roberto felt an inexplicable urge to make amends. Without thinking, he reached down and gently patted the head of the nearest one, a green fluffy ball who seemed particularly distressed.
"I didn't mean to break any rules, little guy. We good now?"
he said with a smile. As one, the creatures raised their tails and shouted in perfect unison, "To the prison!"
"What the—"
Roberto began, but he was cut short as energy cuffs materialized around his wrists. Before he could properly process what was happening, the small creatures were escorting him to a nearby elevator, their stubby legs working double time to keep up with even his confused shuffle. The elevator descended rapidly, and when the doors opened, Roberto found himself in what was clearly a detention area. To his surprise, he saw several humans behind force fields in various cells along the corridor. The fluffy creatures marched him proudly to a cell that already contained another human, and deactivated his cuffs just before the force field reactivated.
"This is getting ridiculous,"
grumbled the green-furred one to its companions as they walked away.
"They just keep breaking the rules. It's like they want to be imprisoned."
Once they were gone, Roberto turned to his cellmate, a younger man with the look of a ship's crew member about him.
"What the hell is going on here? Those little fur balls just arrested me for putting out my cigarette."
The other man extended his hand. "Steve Morrison, navigator on the Stellar Journey. And no, they arrested you for petting one of them. I'm guessing you also called them cute or something similar?" Roberto shook his head.
"Roberto Vasquez. And, yes, I thought they were cute, but I don't think I said it out loud."
He glanced around the cell.
"So, what is this place? Some kind of a joke?"
Steve shrugged and sat back down on the bench. "As far as I can tell, I'm the first human they brought here. Been trying to piece it together from overheard conversations. Apparently, the Gridarians, that's what those fluffy guys are called, passed some kind of law today making it illegal to call them cute or treat them like pets." Roberto snorted.
"That's absurd. They could just ask us not to do that."
"Yeah, well, interspecies communication isn't always straightforward," Steve replied. "From what I've gathered, they've been feeling disrespected by humans. This prison seems to be their solution." Roberto paced the small cell, measuring it with his security officer's eye.
"We could break out of here in about 5 minutes. The force field emitter is a standard Tellurian model. Hit it with enough strength, and it'll short out temporarily."
Steve nodded thoughtfully. "Probably, but should we? They seem to be having fun with their new prison. I'd hate to ruin their game on the first day." Roberto stared at Steve for a long moment before bursting into laughter.
"You're worried about hurting their feelings? They've imprisoned us."
I know, Steve said, holding up his hands. "But look at them." He nodded towards a group of Gridarians at the far end of the corridor, their tails bouncing excitedly as they processed another human prisoner. "They're so proud of themselves. It's kind of enduring." Roberto continued pacing.
"Endearing or not, I have a shipment of Regulan crystals to oversee in 3 hours. I can't sit in a cell because some fluff balls are having an identity crisis."
After a few minutes of discussion, they reached a compromise. They would try to reason with the Gridarians first, explaining that while they respected their authority, they had responsibilities that required their release. If diplomacy failed, then they would consider a more direct approach to securing their freedom. "Besides," Steve added with a grin, "I'm curious to see how they plan to run this prison. Do they have a processing system? Scheduled meals? Exercise time? This whole operation looks like it was thrown together in about an hour." Roberto sighed and sat down on the bench beside Steve.
"Fine, we'll try it your way first. But if I miss my shipment inspection, I'm holding you personally responsible."
As if on cue, a group of Gridarians approached their cell, led by one with striking purple and black fur, who carried himself with particular authority. The leader stopped before their cell, crossed his arms, and raised his spiral tail to its full height.
"Humans,"
the purple and black Gridarian announced with grave solemnity,
"you have been imprisoned for violations against Gridarian dignity. You will remain here until you learn proper respect."
Steve and Roberto exchanged glances. Phase 1 of their plan, communication, was about to begin. Captain Victoria, Vicky, Esperanza examined the bright crystal carefully, turning it over in her hands as the Hodarian merchant watched expectantly. As the captain of the scientific vessel Horizon, she had a keen eye for valuable specimens. Her ship had transported a team of xenobiologists to the Federation Central Hub for an interspecies scientific convention, giving her a rare opportunity to browse the exotic wares of the trading district.
These crystals allegedly respond to neural patterns,
The Hodarian merchant explained, his translucent appendages rippling with excitement.
very valuable for research, yes. Special price for science captain.
Vicky was about to reply when she realized she was suddenly surrounded. Looking down, she found herself encircled by a group of small, furry creatures in various colors. Orange, blue, green, purple, and yellow. Each stood about waist-high, with spiral-shaped tails and cat-like faces. She handed the crystal back to the Hodarian and focused on the small creatures, who were all staring up at her expectantly. Their wide eyes seemed to be waiting for something. "Can I help you little ones with something?" Vicky asked, her tone professional but friendly. The furry creatures continued staring, exchanging glances with each other but offering no explanation for their presence. Their collective silence was starting to become awkward. Vicky sighed, kneeling down slightly to be closer to their eye level.
Are you cuties lost? Or hungry, perhaps? I'm not sure what you need if you don't tell me.
The reaction was immediate and startling. All their spiral tails suddenly stiffened, pointing straight up like exclamation marks. The blue one at the front of the group raised its stubby arms and screeched, "To the prison!" Before Vicky could process what was happening, energy cuffs materialized around her wrists, emitting a blue glow. The small creatures began herding her away from the market stall, their short legs working double time to keep pace as they guided her towards a nearby elevator. "Wait a minute!" Vicky protested, her captain's authority evident in her voice despite the absurdity of the situation. "I know you're Gradarians. You're the law enforcement here. But what exactly am I being arrested for? I haven't broken any regulations." The orange Gradarian looked up at her with what might have been indignation, though it was hard to read their expressions.
Disrespect, a very serious crime.
Disrespect? How did I disrespect you? I just asked if you needed help,
Vicky argued as they reached the elevator. None of the Gradarians bothered responding to her inquiries. They maintained a ceremonial silence as the elevator descended to the lower levels of the station. When the doors slid open, Vicky was greeted by a sight that momentarily stunned her into silence. Before her stretched a corridor lined with cells, each separated from the hallway by a force field barrier. What was remarkable wasn't the prison itself, but rather its occupants. Every single cell contained humans, dozens of them, men and women in various styles of clothing, some in uniforms, others in civilian attire, all looking remarkably unconcerned about their imprisonment. As a veteran of countless space voyages across Federation territory, Vicky had seen her share of detention facilities. This was unlike any prison she had encountered. There was none of the grim oppressiveness that typically characterized such places. The humans inside the cells weren't exhibiting signs of distress. Many were engaged in conversation with each other, or attempting to communicate with the Gradarian guards who strutted importantly through the corridor. The humans she observed didn't have the hardened look of actual criminals. Most appeared to be merchants, crew members, or tourists, ordinary people going about their business on the station. This observation significantly reduced Vicky's concern about her situation, even as her Gradarian captors guided her to a cell that already contained 2 men. The force field deactivated momentarily, allowing her to step inside before reactivating with a soft sound. Her energy cuffs dissolved, and the Gradarians marched away with an air of satisfied accomplishment. "Welcome to the Gradarian Grand Prison," one of the men said with an amused smile. He was younger, with the relaxed demeanor of a ship's navigator. "First time being arrested for saying the wrong word?" Vicky straightened her uniform jacket, her captain's insignia catching the light. "I didn't say anything wrong. They just surrounded me and then arrested me when I asked if they needed help." Both men straightened slightly at the sight of her rank markings. The older one, with the muscular build and alert eyes of security personnel, nodded respectively.
Capitan, I'm Roberto Vasquez, a security chief from a ship. This is Steve Morrison, navigator.
He recognized her captain badge and gestured to his cellmate.
And you've just been caught in the Gradarians' newest attempt at asserting authority.
Captain Victoria Esperanza, she replied. Would one of you mind explaining what's going on here? Why are there dozens of humans locked up in this makeshift prison? Steve leaned against the wall of their cell. It's simple, Captain. The Gradarians passed a new law today making it illegal to call them cute or treat them like pets. Apparently, they've been feeling disrespected by humans who pet them or use baby talk around them.
I didn't call them cute.
Vicky had forgot she had done that. Roberto chuckled.
Neither did I. I just patted one on the head after putting out a cigarette. They seem to be arresting humans for perceived disrespect. Steve here was their first prisoner. He's the only one who actually used the forbidden C word.
After they explained the full situation, Vicky began pacing the small cell, her expression growing increasingly concerned.
This isn't a joke, she said firmly. You realize they're placing men and women together in these small cells? Right now, everyone's treating this as a harmless misunderstanding. But what happens when they arrest someone with malicious intent? All it takes is one bad actor to turn this situation dangerous.
Roberto shrugged.
Capitan, with all due respect, the Gradarians would never manage to arrest anyone truly dangerous. These energy cuffs could be broken by a child, and the force fields are basic commercial models. Everyone here is playing along because, well, look at them.
He gestured towards a group of Gradarians proudly leading another human prisoner down the corridor.
They are trying so hard to be taken seriously.
He pointed to a cell across from theirs, where a human man and woman were sitting close together, laughing and talking animatedly.
Besides, some people are making the most of it. Those two have been flirting since they got thrown in together an hour ago. The Gradarians might be terrible law enforcers, but they are apparently excellent matchmakers.
Steve grinned. Those cute little things couldn't create a truly hostile environment if they tried. It's just not in their nature. Vicky stopped pacing abruptly, her expression hardening.
This has gone far enough.
Without warning, she delivered a swift, precise kick to a specific point of the force field emitter. The barrier sputtered and died with a pathetic whine. She stepped out into the corridor and raised her voice, using the commanding tone that had guided her crew through countless crises.
Attention, everyone! The fun is over!
The entire prison fell silent, humans and Gradarians alike turning to stare at her. She pointed to the cell where the flirting couple sat stunned.
You two, get a room after this is over. The rest of you...
She swept her arms to encompass all the cells.
It's time we had a proper discussion with the Gradarian Council. This prison cannot continue. Someone needs to solve this problem, not by playing along with this charade.
One by one, humans began disabling their cell force fields, some using technical knowledge to short out the emitters, others simply finding the manual release switches that the Gradarians had overlooked. The Gradarian guards watched in horror, their spiral tails drooping in dismay as their prisoners casually walked free.
"Follow me!"
Vicky commanded, and, to her mild surprise, both the freed humans and the despondent Gradarian guards fell into step behind her as she headed for the elevator. In the council chamber, President Gahar and the other members of the Gradarian Council were gathered around the round table, the holographic chamber projecting statistics of arrests made throughout the day. The blue glow illuminated their various colored furs as they listened to a yellow-furred guard deliver his report.
"The prisoner operation has been remarkably successful,"
the guard announced, his tail bouncing with pride.
"We have processed 47 human prisoners in just the first day. Every human who said the C word was successfully detained. There was only one failed arrest, a human thief who broke the cuffs and fled after stealing from a vendor in the Eastern Quadrant. But
That was an isolated incident. Head Enforcer Harag nodded approvingly, his yellow fur catching the light from the holographic display.
Finally, we're being taken seriously by these humans. No more disrespect, no more treatment as pets.
Ambassador Hyor preened, his white fur practically glowing. I've walked through the trading district 3 times today, and not once was I petted or called that word. Our strategy is working perfectly. The council members congratulated each other on their success, tails bouncing in unison as they celebrated this new era of Gradarian respect and dignity. The celebration came to an abrupt halt as the council chamber doors slammed open. 3 humans strode in without announcement or permission, a woman with captain's insignia flanked by 2 men. Gahar leapt to his feet, fur bristling. What is the meaning of this intrusion? This is a closed council session. The woman stepped forward, emanating authority. I'm Captain Victoria Esperanza of the scientific vessel Horizon. This is Security Chief Roberto Vasquez and Navigator Steve Morrison. We're here to inform you that your prison is empty and everyone has been released. A collective gasp spread around the table. Trainee Councillor Hadara's pink fur seemed to pale several shades. Empty? But it hasn't even been a full day! Ambassador Hyor slammed his paw on the table. This is an outrage, an insult to Gradarian authority. It's a reality check, Vicky replied calmly. President Gahar attempted to regain control of the situation, drawing himself up to his full height, an impressive 3 feet, and adopting the formal posture of Gradarian authority with crossed arms and raised tail. Do the humans intend to rebel against Federation regulations? This council has the authority to implement and enforce laws on this station. Your actions constitute a serious breach of— No, Vicky interrupted. We're not rebelling against the Federation. We're preventing an interspecies incident before it escalates. She looked around the table, meeting the eyes of each council member. Let me be direct. I understand you're sensitive about being called cute. I understand you feel disrespected when humans pet you or use certain tones of voice with you. Those are valid concerns that deserve to be addressed. Her voice softened slightly. But imprisonment was the wrong approach. The only reason your prison lasted even a day is precisely because of what you're trying to fight against. Humans find you adorable and didn't want to hurt your feelings by breaking out immediately. If any other species had attempted to imprison humans this way, there would have been resistance, possibly violence. You could have been hurt. In the worst case, the whole threading hub could have been destroyed. The council chamber fell silent as the Gridarians processed this uncomfortable truth. After a long moment of countless gazes exchanged, Gahar spoke, his voice subdued. What would you suggest instead, Captain? What followed was a surprisingly productive discussion. Once the initial tension dissipated, both sides began working toward a practical solution. Vicky and her companions explained human perspectives, while the Gridarians articulated their grievances about being treated as pets rather than respected sentient beings. The fundamental issue is communication, Vicky explained. Most humans don't realize they're being disrespectful. In human culture, calling something cute is a compliment, and physical contact, like petting, is often a sign of affection.
But we are not pets,
Harag protested.
We are intelligent beings with a complex society.
I know, Steve interjected, but you have to be explicit about these boundaries. The solution is education, not punishment. By the end of the discussion, a new approach was formulated. The Council would draft a clear memo to be distributed to every human ship entering the trading hub, explaining Gridarian customs, boundaries, and proper etiquette for interaction. The memo would explicitly address the issue with the word cute and physical contact, providing cultural context the humans could understand. Additionally, Roberto suggested, you might consider hiring a few human enforcers to work alongside your guards.
They could intercept potential cultural misunderstandings before they escalate.
Gahar's ears perked up at this suggestion. Human enforcers working for Gridarian security? That will need consideration. Trainee Councillor Hadara, who had been quiet throughout most of the discussion, finally spoke up.
We could establish a cultural liaison office near the docking bays. First-time visitors could receive orientation about local customs before entering the trading districts.
As the meeting concluded, Vicky extended her hand to President Gahar. After a moment's hesitation, he reached out and shook it, a human gesture of agreement that he had learned was more appropriate than the petting he'd endured in previous diplomatic encounters.
Cultural understanding goes both ways, Vicky said with a smile. We'll respect your boundaries, and perhaps you can try to understand the human intentions. While sometimes misguided, are rarely malicious.
Gahar nodded, the slight upward curve of his mouth, a true Gridarian smile, visible only to those who knew what to look for. Perhaps there is wisdom in this approach. After all, running a prison proved more complicated than anticipated. As the humans left the council chamber, Roberto leaned towards Steve.
So, no more calling them the C-word, huh? That's going to be tough to remember, and even harder to explain without causing misunderstandings.
Steve grinned. I'm sure they'll remind us. Firmly. Probably with those little crossed arms and bouncy tails.
Don't start,
Vicky warned, but there was a hint of amusement in her voice.
Besides, they're not that cute.
But even as she said it, a Gridarian youngling scurried past in the corridor, its oversized spiral tail dragging behind it as it chased a rolling toy, and all three humans had to bite their tongues to keep from commenting on the adorable sight. Some cultural adjustments would take time, but it was a start.